One area that has been discussed has been the consolidation of city and county departments and/or services. Do you support consolidation? And specifically, what areas might you support, and what savings, if any, do you feel would be realized? Mr. Anderson.
Maya? I'm going to come back to rental inspection in my closing comments. I can't let that go. But at any rate, this is consolidation we're talking about now. In 1974, the city and the county, miraculously enough, came together and decided to combine the police. So the sheriff collapsed into the police department for the whole county. A brilliant move. And there are other opportunities that we can also agree on and attempt to consolidate. Currently, right now, the county and the city is working to consolidate the 911 system so that we coordinate the fire and the police, the rural fire, and the EMS under one system. Now, is consolidation going to save money? Probably in the long run, but initially it's going to take a certain amount of equipment and coordination, and it may cost a bit more to coordinate it, but we'll end up with a safer, more effective, more efficient system between the county and the city and all of its emergency services. So I would say it is dollars well spent, and it's dollars that we need to spend in that area to make us more efficient. Now, politically, the problem is that you've got a city commission which oversees the city administration, and you've got a county commission with 4 additional elected officers that should be appointed: the county treasurer, the county clerk, the county attorney, and the register of deeds. All of those are political instead of appointed, and so that makes it politically difficult for the city and the county to always cooperate.
I lived here in Manhattan 40 years ago when they combined the Manhattan Police Department with the Riley County Police. It's called now. It was the Sheriff's Department. So through the years, Mayor Sneed knows the problem I've had with noise complaints in my neighborhood. And so Alvin Johnson, the director of the Riley County Police, told the City Commission, I was there witnessing, he said, when somebody calls about noise complaint, I live 2 blocks north of Aggieville, across the street from Kansas State, right there in the middle of the party zone. So Al Johnson said, well, the policeman has to go out 3 different times on the same location before he gives a ticket. Now, if that policeman, if the shift changed, if that policeman got involved in a DUI and it takes 2 hours, the next police come out there, and that policeman has to come out 3 times before we give him a ticket. I called the police over 100 times in the 30 years, and not once did they give a disturbing the peace ticket, not once in 30 years. Because, as the police said, after dark, we get involved in the felonies, we get involved in the assaults, we get involved in the drunk driving, we get involved, and they just totally neglect the city enforcement of the city ordinances. That's what a police department does. Sheriff's department does the other. So there's negatives about combining. You could say maybe in maintenance, city, county vehicles, possibly. You could incorporate private and go contracts on some of the things like the large tree removal and some of that big equipment. They can rent. A lot of these contractors are renting equipment, not owning forklifts. They're renting it. And so there's combining with private and public services by renting equipment instead of buying so much.
I think there is opportunity in consolidation. The difficulty has already been mentioned is you have to get these different government entities to work together to get that done. And then if you're going to consolidate, who's going to control it? You know, you can get into those turf war battles. When I talk about consolidation, the end product I'm not so much in favor of, like say the fire department. But I think there's a lot of support functions that can be consolidated. For example, on the administrative end, when you have information technology, when you have payroll services, where you have HR, some of those things are common to every business, and every entity can work on being consolidated. Now you have that turf war issue that you still have with those, and that's where privatization is a possibility to come in, because that can help solve who's going to run it. You get that private company to run it, they make the decisions on who they're going to keep, who they're not going to keep, that takes it out of the political realm. And then those different government entities could even sign their own independent contract. If everyone agrees up front, we're going to do it with the same company, give that company economies of scale. And if different entities want a different level of service even, they can even negotiate that into their contract. I've worked with contract services before, I've managed them, I've used them in different parts of my operation, and they can supplement things very well. If you're going to do that, I like to look at one that also does a lot of private work as well as just government work. Some companies specialize in just doing things for government. I like to have them where they actually do both. I think that offers more opportunity for the employees who work there. It gives them, exposure to both sides, and also can give those employees more opportunity than they have today when they're working in a much smaller government entity. So I think there's definitely opportunities there. There's a lot of things that can be done. Politically, it's going to be very difficult. It's often talked about and never done. But I'm more than willing to give it another try.
I think the philosophy of consolidation is a good one, but you have to look at cost-benefit analysis. I mean, what is the gain? If you take like the recent consolidation of dispatch services, it may cost a few more dollars, but because of the public safety end of it, it's worth doing. It's value added. So not all consolidation is necessarily going to return money to the taxpayers. But if there's a value there and people desire it, then we should do it. But it requires big study. The Riley County Police Department, I've heard different stories on, is it effective on the consolidation, is it not? The one thing that's troubling about that is it did create a law board, and it caused maybe some other problems on funding and how funding goes. And the city always has to contribute to it, and I've heard a lot of folks say, well, we don't really control that budget because the law board does it, and we can't affect it. And that's a bit troubling. So when you consolidate, you have to do a real good study and figure out, okay, what is the real impact of this? Now, I think based on that, if you look at various government agencies that we have, as John said, you could look at things like HR functions that are common. You can benchmark one human resources office against any other one in any business, and their functions are fairly similar. And are there some cost savings that can be realized? Yes. But it's going to require some real smart folks to sit down and say, let's take a hard look at this. Finally, if you look at major things, I view what the city does. You have functions and you have tasks. You might be able to outsource specific tasks and save some money there, but clearly you don't try to outsource or something like the fire department or the police department, something of that nature. Those have to stay in-house. Those are government functions.
I think the idea of discussing consolidation in the county city, there's different functions that both have, and it's by law and it's by function. And they both, in our case, in Riley County and the city of Manhattan, they operate on two different systems. What's the cost of consolidating IT systems, and how can that better benefit the overall public? The argument that I hear a lot is in utilizing the RCP as an example, well, it just costs too much. It continues to go up in cost. And how come we're having to pay the lion's share and the county's not? And those are arguments that are consistent in every discussion I've heard in the whole dialogue about consolidating. We have two entirely different forms of government. Phil pointed out, the county is elected. The heads of all those departments are elected. In the city, they're actually hired. They're not appointed, they're hired. And that's a very different functioning organization. I think the idea is that if there are common areas, if we can reach an agreement on how it's going to be paid, and I sat through a discussion at the joint commission, county commission, city commission meeting about how to pay for the consolidation of the dispatch. And everybody's arguing about, well, we're going to pay this, or you're going to pay that. But we'll just let you and we'll contract. Well, if we contract, then we've lost a level of control possibly that makes it more difficult to make sure that the safety is always out there first. So it's a very, very difficult thing, and it can't happen overnight, and it may never happen, but I think it's worthwhile to at least explore the common areas.
Okay, thank you.